Okay, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. How are you, everyone? Okay, I hope you are doing good. Today's session in Microteaching is the third session. It's about the methodological history of language teaching, covering approach, method, and techniques. So here, the objective of learning will be students are able to explain the history of language, covering approach, method, and techniques in NLT. Students are able to differentiate between method, approach, and techniques in NLT. Well, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, methodology informs teachers about different ways to organize teaching practices. It's according to Harmer. He suggests that there are 4 levels of organization at the level of methodology. They are approach, method, and procedure, and also technique. So here you have to I'm going to make it clear to the 4 levels of organization in the methodology. The following description is inspired by this framework. Many elements of this framework are also discussed by Anthony 1963 and Richard and Rogers in 1986. So the 4 levels of organization here are discussed by Harmer, Anthony, and Rogers. Well, let's start to find out about the approach. So what is approach? Well, approach refers to the general assumption about what language is and about how learning a language occurs. It represents the sum of our philosophy about both the theory of language and the theory of learning. In other words, so if we find approach here is the nature of language, and it is how knowledge of a language is acquired, and it also defines as the condition that promote language acquisition. So when we talk about approach here, we have several approach, many kinds of approaches here: teacher-centered, learner-centered, subject matter-centered, teacher-dominated, banking approach, disciplinal, individualistic, indirect, guided, direct, collaborative, integrated, constructivist, interactive, and so on and so forth. So here are the approaches of learning. Okay, well, I cannot mention one by one, so you are going to find out the definition of what is teacher-centered, what learner-centered is. Okay, you just find it by yourself, the definition of all approaches here. Then we go on to the method. What is method? Method is a practical implementation of an approach. It's a theory which can put into practice at the level of method. It includes the particular skill to be taught, the roles of the teachers and the learners in language teaching and learning, the appropriate procedures and techniques, the content to be taught, and the order in which the content will be presented. So here method here also involves a specific syllabus organization, choices of the materials that will boost learning, and the means to access learners and evaluate teaching and learning itself. Okay, so this one we call it method. And okay, if we find methods in NLT here, there are kinds of methods. Some familiar methods here, such as grammar translation method, GTM, direct method, audiolingual method, designer method, or we can call it humanistic approach here. It's one part of method. Electic approach. So if we talk about approach in one of methods here, we can call it like a silent way. So there are some here. silent way, such as Steppedia, TPR, CLT, and TBL, task-based learning. Then we also have another term, procedure. Okay, according Harmer, procedure is an ordered set of technique. They are step-by-step measure to execute the method. So if we call it the method is cooperative learning, right? Cooperative learning method. So then here we have some steps in teaching cooperative learning in the classroom. Okay, so they are the description of step-by-step to measure the student learning in the classroom. A common procedure in the grammar translation method, for example, is to start by explaining the grammar rules and exemplifying these rules through sentences that the students then had to translate into their mother tongue. According to Harmer, also a procedure is smaller than method. So if we know the method is cooperative learning, and then what is the procedure? Or the procedure is the student has to do this, the next step will be do that, something like that. So there is the exact procedure. The procedure might come from the method, the cooperative learning. Okay, the next one is technique. What is technique then? Techniques are part and parcel of procedures. They are the actual moment-to-moment classroom step that lead to a specific outcome. It is well-defined procedure used to accomplish a specific activity or task. Okay, here is the illustration. So the small thing is a technique, the green circle is the method and approach. Different theories about the nature of language and how language are learned is approach. Imply different ways of teaching language is the method, and the different methods make use of different kinds of classroom activities. So the activities is the techniques. So here is the conclusion, and then I can also conclude then from this picture we can call it the approach here. Okay, deal with the general philosophies of teaching. Okay, so if we say the approach of our teaching methodology is student-centered approach, okay, like in the previous slide here. So one of the example of approaches is learner-centered. So here the approach. Okay, we use the method. For example, the method is cooperative learning. Okay, cooperative learning here, the method, because methods deal with the more practical nuts and bolts. Yeah, and then in the cooperative learning we have types of cooperative learning, right? Like such as jigsaw, start, and so on and so forth. So in cooperative learning there is what we call it procedure. Okay, so we have to follow the procedure in the cooperative learning here. For example, they have to provide a democratic environment. The students in the group should support to learn independently and cooperatively, and the students have to teach how to share the ideas, how to work, they have to solve the problem in a group. So that's the procedure. And then the technique will be different in the classroom based on the types of cooperative learning itself. Okay, so here is the next slide is references. I got some sources about this topic. Okay, so you can find those sources for your further reading. Okay, I think that's all from our course today. Thank you very much for your attention. and I'll see you again. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.